What's up, everyone? It's Sports Kings Best here, and we're back with another video. This time we're going to be doing the top 10 NBA what-ifs. So we're going to start off with an honorable mention first, and it's going to be, what if Derrick Rose was never injured? Right out of the gate, we get things started off with a what-if scenario that has been discussed tons of times, and one of my videos I did. In the early 2010s, Derrick Rose catapulted himself to stardom by becoming the youngest MVP in NBA history, and consistently having the Bulls at or toward the top of the NBA standings. Rose's athleticism and skills were incredible to watch, and all of us thought we were seeing one of the greatest point guards in NBA history evolve before our very eyes. Sadly, those feelings would not last. In a first-round playoff matchup against the 76ers, the Bulls had a large lead late in the fourth quarter of Game 1. Inexplicably, Rose remained on the court even though the game was all but over. As he prepared to make a cut and leap to the basket for a layup, Rose went down in agony, tearing his ACL. After missing the entire 2012-2013 season, Rose returned in 2013-2014, only to tear the meniscus in his opposite knee. From that point forward, he was never the same again. It is hard to imagine what could have been if Rose never suffered those injuries. I do think at least one more MVP award would have been in his future, along with an NBA championship for the Bulls, which they have been longing for since the departure of Michael Jordan in 1998. This injury changed NBA history, as Rose's career was on path toward becoming a top 10 point guard ever, and a top 5 wasn't out of the question either. Derrick Rose is still one of the most beloved players in the NBA today. It just would have been nice for all of us to see his true potential reached. Number 10 is, what if Len Bias never passed away? In 1986, Len Bias of the University of Maryland was touted as one of the nation's top basketball players and a guaranteed lock for a top 3 pick in the upcoming NBA draft. He would be selected second overall by the Boston Celtics, and the prospects of him joining a team already loaded with Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish had the NBA world buzzing. Unfortunately, not even 48 hours later, Bias would tragically pass away in his college dorm of a cocaine-induced heart attack. The death shocked the entire nation, as Len Bias was supposed to be the next great rival to Michael Jordan and the other greats in the game at the time. He was that dang good. There's even a great possibility that with Bias' arrival in Boston, maybe the Bulls aren't the team that ran the 90s, but Boston led by Bias instead. The rivalry with Jordan could have been the next Magic Johnson-Larry Bird type rivalry, as these two would undoubtedly see each other every year after year, sharing the same conference. Len Bias' death is one of the most tragic occurrences in NBA history, and we all wish it was far more than a what-if scenario. At number 9, I have, what if Phoenix Suns drafted Luka Doncic instead of DeAndre Ayton? In 2018, the Phoenix Suns owned the first overall pick in the NBA draft for the first time in franchise history. As they looked around at the draft pool and went over their team needs, they decided a big man was most important and selected DeAndre Ayton from the University of Arizona. Now, Ayton has not been bad with the Suns by any means over the last 5 years, averaging 16.7 points and 10.4 rebounds for his career, and helping them lead to a 2021 and helping lead them to the 2021 NBA Finals. However, there was just a future NBA superstar taken just a few picks later. That perhaps could have won them their first NBA title. The future superstar would have been Luka Doncic from Slovenia, who has been an MVP caliber player pretty much from his rookie season on. What could have happened if Phoenix selected Doncic instead of Ayton? Well, a lot actually. I truly believe that the Suns would have won the 2021 NBA championship if Doncic was leading the charge instead of Chris Paul. I also believe that they would have had more than one by now, given the talent they had been able to bring around their stars. I also believe there's no way Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal would be in Phoenix right now, considering Doncic ended up earning a Supermax extension in no time with Dallas. We wouldn't have the fierce rivalry between Luka Doncic and Devin Booker, as they would be teammates taking over the NBA one game at a time. The Mavericks would probably be the only thing that remained the same, just with Trae Young as their point guard instead of Luka. Talk about a rift in space and the time continuum, literally. Number 8, I have, what if the Detroit Pistons, that's my favorite NBA team, clown me all you want, drafted Carmelo Anthony instead of Darko Milicic. In the 2003 NBA draft, there was a massive group of world-class athletes, future champions, future MVPs, and future Hall of Famers available to all 30 NBA teams. Of course, nobody knew what any of these players would turn out to be, but hindsight is always 20/20. In this case, the Detroit Pistons owned the second overall pick after LeBron James and was locked in first pick to Cleveland. With that selection, they decided to take Darko Milicic out of Serbia, a 7-footer who had highly touted by scouts during the draft process. And the Detroit Pistons made one of the worst mistakes in their franchise history. Milicic would go to be on one of the worst draft busts ever, yet played 10 seasons in the NBA, averaging 6 points per game, 4.2 rebounds for his career. Right behind Detroit, the Denver Nuggets would select Carmelo Anthony, a future Hall of Famer, and one of the top scorers in NBA history. Of course, Detroit would go on to win an NBA championship the season immediately following this draft in 2004, so the decision wasn't a complete disaster. But what if Carmelo Anthony was their choice instead of Darko? Well, there are again a few scenarios that could have happened. The first is that Anthony comes to Detroit, wins the championship as a rookie, and his legacy is completely reshaped, and he's no longer viewed as a ringless player. However, would Detroit still have traded for Rasheed Wallace that season, who became a big part of the Pistons' championship run? Would Anthony have hurt the Pistons with his offensively driven mindset? Would the Pistons have turned Carmelo into a completely different beast on the defensive end? Those are the questions many do not think about in this situation. At number 7, what if the Minnesota Timberwolves didn't pass on Steph Curry twice in the 2009 NBA draft? The Minnesota Timberwolves have a long and cringeworthy list of mistakes they have made in the NBA draft. Over the course of their team's history, none of them are bigger than the blunder they pulled off in 2009. In the 2009 NBA draft, the Timberwolves owned both the 5th and 6th overall picks, desperately searching for the next star to turn the franchise around. With the 5th pick, they selected Ricky Rubio out of Spain, who would take 2 years off in Spain before joining the team in 2011-2012. With the 6th pick, they selected Johnny Flynn, who played 3 years in the NBA before heading overseas to finish his basketball career. Right after those 2 picks, the Golden State Warriors selected Stephen Curry, and the rest is history. As we know it, nobody in their right mind at the time knew Steph Curry would eventually change the game of basketball as we know it, win 4 NBA championships, and become the greatest shooter the game has ever seen. However, if he had gone to Minnesota, none of that may have happened. Who's to say Minnesota doesn't completely change how Curry plays the game? Who's to say Curry becomes a superstar without the guidance of Steve Kerr and Mark Jackson? At the same time, who's to say Curry doesn't change the Timberwolves franchise around and win them 4 NBA titles? Either way, the game and its history would look so far different than it does today. At number 6, I have what if the Portland Trail Blazers drafted Kevin Durant instead of Greg Oden? For the last 46 years, the Portland Trail Blazers have done whatever they can do to try and return at the top of the NBA as champions. As much as they've done right, they've also had some colossal missteps that have prevented that from happening. One such misstep occurred in the 2007 NBA draft when they owned the first overall pick. With that pick, they decided on a talented big man, Greg Oden, from the Ohio State University. Unfortunately for Portland, Oden would miss his entire rookie season and played just a total of 82 games in 6 years due to knee and foot injuries that have shelved him for seasons at a time. Looming behind him with the 2nd overall pick was one of the greatest scorers in NBA history, Kevin Durant. Over the years, Durant has become one of the most efficient players ever while winning 4 scoring titles, an MVP, 2 NBA titles, and 2 Finals MVPs with the Thunder, Warriors, Nets, and Suns. Now imagine this, if Portland had decided to take Durant, they would have had a trio of him, Damian Lillard, and Brandon Roy take the floor together. Of course, Roy would be gone soon due to early retirement, thanks to knee issues. However, that still leaves Portland with Durant and Lillard, could go down as one of the greatest duos ever. Personally, I think they would have been a tougher matchup for Miami in 2012 than Oklahoma City was for Miami in the finals. And I believe they could get past the Warriors in 2016 as well. At number 5, I have what if the Golden State Warriors traded Steph Curry and Klay Thompson for Chris Paul in 2011. Back in 2011, Chris Paul was one of the 2 best point guards in the entire NBA with the New Orleans Hornets. As great as an individual game was, the Hornets were far from a championship contender. Growing frustrated with the organization, Chris Paul requested a trade out of New Orleans. The kicker was Paul had a no-trade clause and could control where he went, which became important to the outcome of this what-if scenario. In the market for a star, the Golden State Warriors were prepared to send both Steph Curry and Klay Thompson to the Hornets in exchange for Paul. At the time, Curry was a young player battling ankle issues, and Thompson was a rookie out of Washington. Paul was not prepared to go from one borderline playoff team to another one and nixed the deal quite quickly, stating he would not re-sign with them after the season was over and hit free agency. Paul would eventually be traded to the Clippers and become a fierce rival and victim of the Warriors dynasty that won 4 NBA titles in 8 years. The hilarious thing about this what-if scenario is the fact that all these years later, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry are all members of the Golden State Warriors in 2023. Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry were all members of the Golden State Warriors in 2023. Paul was traded to the Warriors last year's offseason in a deal with the Washington Wizards in exchange for Jordan Poole. While we wait and see, looking at this deal from today's standpoint, this could have been completely rewritten in NBA history. If Steph Curry and Klay Thompson go on to become the same Splash Bros that we know and love today and win the Hornets their first NBA championship in history, the Hornets become the dynasty so polarizing amongst fans in today's modern NBA. Steph Curry fulfills his own legacy by wearing the same jersey his father did when he played with the Hornets from 1989 to 1998. There are Hornets jerseys everywhere with their names on it. Michael Jordan looks like a genius as an owner, not a failure, even if he buys the team. The rivalry and the battle with LeBron James occur in the Eastern Conference playoffs rather than the NBA Finals, and who's to say they get past him? The past decade of NBA history could have been completely different had this trade gone through and nobody would have known it at the time. At number 4, what if the NBA did not stop the Los Angeles Lakers from forming a super team with Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant? In December 2011, the NBA was just ending a lockout that stretched 161 days. That same day, the Los Angeles Lakers, New Orleans Hornets, and Houston Rockets agreed to a deal that would send Chris Paul to the Lakers, Paul Gasol to the Houston Rockets, and a group of players that included Lamar Odom to the Hornets. After the lockout, NBA Commissioner David Stern was in no mood to approve a trade after just dealing with the fallout from the long lockout. He vetoed the trade, and it sent shockwaves across the NBA. The possibility of a Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant duel was beyond the wildest dreams of Lakers fans at the time. Even with a shortened season, Kobe Bryant was still in his prime, averaging over 27 points per game, while Paul was the best point guard in basketball, averaging over 19 points per game, 9 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. There's no doubt this duo, along with some other missing pieces, would have delivered at least one NBA championship. We would have gotten the Kobe Bryant and LeBron James matchup that we never saw in the NBA Finals, finally settling the debate between the two legends once and for all. As for Paul with the Lakers, he inevitably gets the championship that he has missed out on his entire career. Rather than being seen as one of the greatest ringless players in NBA history, his career finally gets the respect it deserves. At number 3, I have what if LeBron James never leaves the Cleveland Cavaliers for the Miami Heat in 2010. From 2011 through 2014, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh led the Miami Heat to 4 straight NBA Finals appearances and 2 NBA championships when they came together in 2010. The trio became the most hated group in the league, with LeBron James the most hated man on the planet. It was a huge shock to the NBA fans everywhere as James held a nationally televised special to announce his departure from the only city he had ever known in the NBA. What if James never decided to have this villain arc, though? Frustrated and defeated, part of the reason James went to Miami and teamed up with 2 other stars is so he could actually have the firepower to take down teams like the Celtics. The way things were going and how they looked moving forward, the Cavaliers weren't getting any backup for him anytime soon. If James never leaves Cleveland, there's a tremendous chance that we are not talking about him as arguably the greatest player in NBA history. His longevity may have remained, and there's a good chance he leaves in either 2014 or 2018, as he did with both Miami and Cleveland a second time. There's also a chance that James preserves and gets to the Eastern Conference anyway with whatever Cleveland provides with him. At number 2, I have what if the Charlotte Hornets ever traded Kobe Bryant to the Los Angeles Lakers. As everyone can recall, Kobe Bryant began his NBA journey as a 13th pick of the Hornets in 1996, straight out of Lower Merion High School in Philadelphia. Bryant had already been tabbed out as a future superstar in the NBA and was ready to skip his college days for a shot in the league right away. As Kobe famously recalled, the Hornets had let him know that he wasn't needed in Charlotte. 2 weeks later, he was traded to the Lakers in exchange for Val Divac. Bryant went on to become one of the greatest players in NBA history with 5 NBA championships, while the Hornets have yet to even appear in an NBA Finals. Kobe Bryant and teammate Shaquille O'Neal became one of the most unstoppable duos in NBA history, winning 3 straight championships from 2000 to 2002, and Bryant would help them go back-to-back alongside with Paul Gasol in 2009 to 2010. I cringe when I think about what could have happened if Bryant had wound up with the Hornets instead. I don't see him becoming a global icon in a place like Charlotte, where it would have been much tougher to compete for the NBA titles. Given the talent around him in his early years, I do still think he'd become one of the NBA's all-time greats, but 5 NBA championships in Charlotte seems unlikely, especially with Shaq heading into his peak with the Lakers and teams like Philadelphia and Detroit with much more refined rosters. I think Kobe's legacy would have taken a massive hit had he never been traded. At number 1, I have what if the Portland Trail Blazers had drafted Michael Jordan instead of Sam Bowie. Back in 1984, NBA draft the Portland Trail Blazers owned the 2nd overall pick. Hakeem Olajuwon was a lock to go 1st overall to Houston, and the decision for Portland came down to Sam Bowie, their eventual selection, or Michael Jordan, arguably the best player in the country from North Carolina. With Portland taking Bowie, the Chicago Bulls would take Michael Jordan with the 3rd pick, and you all know what happened next. The Bulls would go on to win 6 NBA championships, while Jordan became the greatest player in NBA history with 6 Finals MVP awards, 5 MVP awards, 10 scoring titles, and many other individual honors to be the greatest resume ever. He even led the Bulls to an NBA title over Portland in 1992. Meanwhile, Bowie was decent, but nothing compared to the player Jordan turned out to be, and Portland is still searching for their first championship since 1977 in 2024 now. If Michael Jordan had been selected by Portland, it would have been paired him with Clyde Drexler on the wings for the Trailblazers. This would have quite possibly been the greatest two-way duo that have ever lived. Jordan never has his playoff rivalry with Detroit. I would guess that Portland even defeated them in the NBA Finals in 1988. The narrative around Jordan's early career struggles is non-existent, and he remains the greatest player in NBA history to this day. Although we don't need an imaginary scenario to confirm that last result. But thank you guys for all tuning in to this Top 10 NBA What Ifs. Drop a like, comment, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, and I will see you guys next week.